Privileged to welcome Jim Smith, our program manager from Minnesota, who will conduct this session, and our very special guests tonight, Delfin Bautista and Rebeca Del Cristo. If any of you have had the opportunity to hear either Rebecca or Delphine speak, you know you're in for a treat. I've heard Delphine on a couple of occasions. Love the way that Delphine makes the experience of being a two-spirited transgender person so accessible, so easy, and spiritually relevant for all of us. And Delphine also speaks about Rebecca as such an inspiration. So it's a real treat to be able to welcome you both tonight, and I look forward to seeing you at the end of the program. Thank you.
Great. Thank you, Marianne. And we had Rebecca for a moment. I don't see her on screen.
Broadcasting.
Thanks, Delphine. She had clicked on there. Oops, there you are. Hi, Rebecca. Oh, we can't hear you. Oh, she's off again. So Delphine and Rebecca are in the same home, but they're in separate rooms so as not to create an echo effect. But Delphine, you may need to come to the rescue of your mother here if her volume isn't working. Hi, Rebecca. We can't hear you, so Rebecca, I'm going to ask you one question. Would you mind putting your browser in front of your image, your own the image of your face there? Put the arrow or the browser in front of your face, and do you see a little megaphone, a little icon of a megaphone on the right-hand corner at the bottom? If there's a line through it, click on that because you're muted. But if there's no line through that audio icon, don't do anything. Okay, now you're muted. Rebecca, if you want to put your arrow, put your cursor in front of your image and click on the audio button to unmute so that red line goes away. Folks, we had this problem earlier in our tech rehearsal, but we got it figured out. But sometimes when folks log out and then log back in, the problem returns. So please bear with us here as we try to figure out Rebecca's volume control. We can hear you, but you're very soft, Rebecca. So again, put your arrow, put your cursor in front of your image, and make sure your volume is up. And make sure your volume is up on your computer as well. Also, make sure that your headphone is securely plugged into your computer. So why don't you take your headphone out of your plug-in out of the computer and plug it back in. There we go.
Okay, can you hear me now?
We got sound.
Okay.
Yes. We have a landing, Houston. Thank you. Folks, thank you for sticking with us here. This is the way it happens sometimes with the tech stuff. Delphine, thank you very much. Appreciate your help. Okay, let's do it here. I am really privileged to be able to sit with the two of you and have this conversation. And again, as Marianne suggested, I want to invite all of you who are attending to listen well and to log in with your own questions. So type those into the question and answer box, and Logan and Marianne will hold on to those. And in the second half hour of our interview, you'll get a chance to have those questions presented. But I am really grateful to sit down with the both of you, especially Rebecca, with your presence, because I think that the journey to self-acceptance, whether we are gay, lesbian, bisexual, transgender, or identify with some gender identity other than the conventional identity that the world wants to tack onto us, it's a sacred journey if we allow it, and it's a sacred journey for those in our life who love us, who choose to walk with us. So I am sure that both of you have experienced a journey that has been very, very sacred, and we'll look forward to hearing that. But I want to start with you, Delfin, and just give you some time to tell us about your own journey of self-discovery. You've had not one, but at least two sort of moments of real self-discovery, and could you tell us a little bit about that?
Okay, growing up in a Catholic home, in a Cuban home, I realized early on that being different was not acceptable. It was not a safe space to be able to raise questions. And from a very young age, I knew there was something different about me, but I didn't know what it was. I didn't have language. I didn't have anything really to explore that. And so all I knew was that being different was bad. And I kept a lot of things bottled up inside. My mom and my stepfather taught me that there was this thing called gay and lesbian, but that they were sinful and wrong, and that if you were one of those things, you were going to burn in hell. And that was reinforced by church, going to CCD on Sunday, going to Mass on Sunday. All of those messages that I got at home were reinforced, and so I couldn't talk about these things at home, couldn't talk about these things at church, couldn't talk about these things at school. And so I bottled up everything and completely hid my sexuality, completely hid questions that I had about my gender. And so I ultimately became the token good Catholic boy, and was involved in youth group, wanted to be a priest, which was a point of a lot of joy for my family to have someone in the family who wanted to be a priest, and gave that my all. Didn't talk about sexuality, did not talk about gender, sort of repressed all of that, and just gave myself to religion. I ultimately did enter the seminary after doing a process with the Legionaries of Christ, doing a process with the Franciscans, doing a process with the diocese. I sort of dated, quote unquote, various religious communities, all with the affirmation of my mom and my sisters, and ultimately entered with the Jesuits. And there was on a month-long silent retreat, and in silence, things tend to come out in more ways than one. And that is where I came out and acknowledged that I was attracted to men, which was a very scary thing, thinking that Father would ask me to leave the seminary and kick me out, but he told me no, that he would work with me, that he would support me, and that not to worry. Ultimately, though, I did leave. I came back to the United States. The seminary I was in the Dominican Republic. I came back to the U.S. with this new word that sort of fit me of being gay, because I only knew that there was something called gay and lesbian. Bisexuality, transgender were words or identities that were not in my vocabulary. I had no idea that they existed. And so I adopted the word gay because if I'm a male and I'm attracted to men, I guess that's what I'm supposed to be. And woke up my mom one night at 2 or 3 in the morning, took her to our little chapel that we have here at home, and just opened up, crying. It's one of the few times in my life that I've cried, just apologizing for letting her down, for being shameful to her, and her reaction to me was that she loved me, that she was my mother, but that she wanted to help
No,
me.
I wanted to kill you.
And the help she offered was to... Okay, there's that too. She took me to a friend of hers, a psychologist, and the psychologist's goal was to cure me. And I went to sessions twice a week for a while, trying to be cured of my gayness. However, after about a year, I was just like, no, Mom, I need to do this. I need to figure this out on my own. And so began a journey of looking into sexuality, looking into what does it mean to be gay or lesbian as a Catholic. I did a stint with Courage for a little bit because, again, these were the only things that I knew that existed. And it wasn't until I got to know Soul Force, which is similar to Dignity, but more from an interfaith perspective, where I came into my own and realized that it is possible to reconcile faith and sexuality, that it is possible to be a faithful sexual person, and through there started learning about bisexuality, started learning about transgender, and was just like, whoa, there's this whole larger world that I didn't know existed. And so at 25, had a second coming out, and coming out as a trans person, and with that beginning a journey of understanding my own sense of gender, looking back and realizing that the little boy who hid behind his mom's back and sister's back, wearing their clothes, playing with my sister's dolls, all hidden from the rest of the family, all of those experiences started to make sense. And I began a journey of exploring gender as a Catholic and figuring out what this new revelation would mean for me personally, but then also ministerially and theologically.
Delfin,
I'll leave it at that.
Yeah, you spoke of your sort of revelation of discovering this new world of transgender. Were you at all frightened by the prospect that that's what you might be? It sounds like you weren't. You talked about it as a cool new world. So you sort of slid into an easy liberation with that discovery, or was it also frightening?
It was and continues to be frightening. I think my mom, my sisters have come a long way with the whole gay thing. To now throw this on top of them, is scary for their reactions. Like most Hispanics and Latinos, we are a very loud family, but we don't talk about our feelings. We talk with feeling, but not about feelings. And so it is a scary conversation to bring up. In terms of my professional work and just even my place within the church, there are no protections for trans people, both professionally and ecclesially. The church doesn't mention us at all, besides that we're diseased. And so it has been scary, but a fear and questions and doubts that have also been tempered, that have been challenged by a newfound sense of liberation and the possibility of just really radical thought, theologically, but then also just personally in my relationship with God.
And we're gonna come back to that relationship with God and your experience of your own gender identities as gift, as a sacred reality. But I want to double back to you, Rebecca. After you wanted to kill this child of yours, how did it go for you after he revealed that he was gay?
Well, I guess that, can you hear me? Okay.
Yep.
I guess like with any journey, he had his journey, and then I began mine. And I think that's the truth
Right.
for every parent. You know, the child comes out and then they free themselves of the burden, but then the burden is on you now, and now you have to start your own journey. So the journey was painful and hard for me. The first reaction was to fix him, and that's what I tried to do first. Didn't work, I guess. So then it was either I accept him, or I'd just push him away from me. And we have a saying in Spanish, in Cuba particularly, that says that Cuban mothers love the child and then they love God. So children in our culture are precious in our own peculiar way. So that prevailed. But nevertheless, even though it prevailed, it was painful to break so many walls and so many fences that were around me because of my age and my upbringing and my cultural background and my religion. So it was I had to break many walls in order to be able to freely accept him the way he is.
And how did you? First of all, I would amend that saying a little bit to say that in loving your child, you love God,
Mm-hmm.
right? And
Yes.
loving the brother or sister in front of us, we do love God. But what helped you to break those rules that surrounded you in society and in church? To fully come to a fuller acceptance of your son and not to be ashamed of it?
Well, I think it was a journey that I did with him mainly. I did it by myself, unfortunately. That's why it took so long, and because it was no support. Yeah. He helped me. He advised me to go to groups that could help me, and I did. And I guess based on those lectures that I went and the people I met, I was able to start seeing the world in a different color. Coming from a very small town in a very orthodox upbringing, your box is quite small. So by talking to other people and seeing other parents with the same journey as I was going at the moment, allowed me to expand my box and make it a little bit bigger, and eventually just move the lid of the box and look at the world around me that I didn't know. He helped me tremendously. The Jazz Institute here in Miami helped me tremendously. I started questioning. I did a lot of meditation at the time. I started reading the words of Jesus in a different way, the love of God regardless. So in different ways, he was the only help I had, and he did a tremendous job helping me with this journey.
Wow. Delfin, you're speaking.
Yes.
Yeah. Delfin, I mean, it strikes me that you really all through this process, I mean, so you're seeing a therapist to sort of coach you out of your sexual orientation, out of your own self-discovery and self-acceptance, but you seem as though you had your feet quite standing on your feet and quite grounded, and despite all of that, it amazes me. You you really you must have been listening well to the still small voice inside of you, because you weren't getting support
Yeah.
from other places, right?
Not really.
Yeah.
My social circle, everyone, all my closest friends, either wanted to be a priest or a nun, and I look back on that and I was like, wow, that's pretty awesome. You know, how many people can say that their little collective group of friends, everyone was going to enter religious life, and when I came out to them, half of them disowned me and half of them affirmed me. And that was pretty much the reaction I got from most of my friends. Very few of them stood by me. But it was those few that helped me, you know, hang in there. And just similar to my mom, really looking at Jesus, looking at God, looking at the church, and being no longer feeling guilty for questioning or disagreeing. But knowing that the things that my mom would tell me, the things that my sisters would tell me, a lot of people have shared that, oh, you know, you should hold that against them, you know, why have you maintained a relationship with your family? And for me, family is crucial, and I don't hold it against them. I think they were honestly doing what they thought was best, as hurtful and as misguided as it may have been. But, you know, my mom and my sisters, and I guess to a certain extent my friends, or I guess former friends, were simply sticking to what they believed in.
Yeah.
With the difference that my family was willing to go in a different direction and consider new ideas, and many of my friends were not.
Yeah, yeah. And you found some solace in some theological writings that you came upon, correct? Some theologians who had been formative to you. Can you say a little bit about that?
The first actually two people, now that I think about it, that I came across was Mel White, the founder of Soul Force and the author of Stranger at the Gate, and then also John McNeil. And they were the only two people that I knew of that I found by doing a Google search. And, or I guess Google wasn't as popular back then. But they really opened my eyes that there are people of faith who identify as LGBT who are okay and, you know, speak from that experience. It wasn't until I got to div school in 2007 that I was introduced to a much larger, expansive theological world. The church here in Miami, though we are a majority Hispanic Latino community, a lot of the theology that I received was very European, very white. And so to get to Yale and learn about nuns who were doing theology, people of color doing theology, queer people doing theology was a revelation, and I fell in love with Ada Maria Isasi Diaz, who recently passed away, Marcella Althaus-Reed, who's an Argentinian theologian, and then Gloria Anzaldúa. And it was just an eye-opening to see these women who were engaging sexuality, who were engaging just personal experiences, and seeing how our everyday struggles are places for theological revelation, and was just an eye-opening experience that I didn't have growing up. It wasn't until I was 27 that I discovered a larger theological world.
Yeah. Delfin, I'm going to ask you, I don't know if you can text, because us three presenters, we are limited as to who we can talk with in the chat box. But could you send those names to Logan, and Logan can send those names out to all of our attendees, because our attendees may be interested in those theologians that you referred to that were formative in your own trans spirituality. And so if you wouldn't mind doing that right now. And Rebeca, how has it been celebrating Delfin's transgender identity? Has that been a learning experience? Has that been more or less difficult than discovering when he came out as gay? What what's been your journey like there? And again, where have you found support toward your own celebration of who your child is?
Well, I guess once you accept a person for what they are, that's what it is. You accept everybody for what they are. Transgender, homosexual, black, white, Jewish, Buddhist, once you get into the level of acceptance, the person is, and that's all it is. It's a good person, it's a good brother, it's a good son, it's a good friend. That's what he is. When he was at the university, he sent me the PFLAG, and he told me, he suggested I should visit a PFLAG group, and they have a very nice PFLAG group in Broward County that I've been visiting for a few years now. And in that group, they have a youth group attached with the Sunshine Cathedral, and we have several parents with trans kids, several bisexual, so it's a mix of parents, and you learn from other parents when you go to these meetings, the journeys that we all go through. And I've been very familiar with parents of trans children in the past years. So it's a matter of talking to these parents, which are amazing parents, and these are teenager kids that are going through all these changes. You again reinforces acceptance. This is my child. My child is this way, and that's all it is.
Yeah. And you're involved as a listening parent with Fortunate Families.
Yes, I'm involved with listening parents, and I am involved with PFLAG here in Miami. I am the only Spanish-speaking contact for parents that do not speak English.
Okay. And for those attendees who may not know what Fortunate Families is, it's a ministry by parents of LGBT children and for parents of LGBT, parents and families of LGBT children. And listening parents are spread out across the nation and are there to help other parents, grandparents, family members to walk into greater acceptance and to see the sacred gift that their children really are in their diversity. Delfin, I want to hear you talk about some of the figures in history that have been an inspiration for you, and figures from the scriptures that have sort of challenged that strict binary understanding that so many in our church and society still have, that by God you are either male or female, and we know it when we see those body parts when a child arrives into the world. Pope Benedict basically said so many those words in his Christmas address, and it was painful to hear the ignorance, the absolute ignorance coming from the Holy Father, and yet there are signs even in the scriptures that God indeed has created a diversity of God's children, and lift up some of those for us, would you?
From a historical and even from a biblical point of view, there are many examples of people who challenged that there is only male and female, sort of the binary thinking, how they personally identified. I mean, there are people who say, so-and-so is transgender. I personally don't feel comfortable, doing that, because we don't know how they identified, but we can see people who sort of transgressed and pushed those norms. Just historically, Joan of Arc was, a warrior woman and was in the military and did not want to wear women's clothing and was silent because of that, in addition to her visions and experiences. Teresa of Avila, here we have a nun who was cloistered and is talking about the Trinity better than most priests of her day, to the point that she was, questioned by the Inquisition several times. And so we have people who challenged and who lived beyond what was expected of them given their historical context. And just looking at the Bible, I mean, there's the figure of God creating all of us, male and female, and so what does that say about God and the God self? And then looking at the presence of eunuchs both in the Hebrew Bible and in the New Testament, who were the closest thing perhaps to our understanding of transgender today and intersex, but ultimately were examples of individuals who did not fit male and female and are there. So much that one of the first converts to Christianity is the Ethiopian eunuch in Acts. And so we don't have to look far. I mean, we have these examples, we have these saints, quote unquote, however one understands saints, in our history, and it's just remembering who they are.
Mm-hmm. And you know, we're coming upon the Passion accounts as we approach Holy Week, and you lifted up for me a scene in the accounts of the Passion that just really opened my eyes. Say a little bit about that passage.
I forget which gospel. I'm a bad divinity school student. Which gospel it is. There's the story of Jesus sending two of his disciples into Jerusalem to prepare the upper room, the room where the Passover meal would be celebrated, which ultimately would be the Last Supper. And the person that he signals out for the disciples to look for is a man at a well who would be collecting water. And historically, traditionally, according to the Jewish custom, that should have been a woman collecting the water, but here we have a male breaking a stereotype who Jesus selects as the person who would show the apostles and the disciples where to go. I'm sure some conservative theologians would argue against that, but it is there, whether it's a mistranslation or not, but the story is that a male collecting water, which was unheard of, would be the one to show the apostles where to go. And history is full of those types of examples.
Absolutely. I just love how you lift that up for us. And as you were speaking about historical figures, I thought of Julian of Norwich, a mystic, who spoke of Jesus as mother and brother to us. Really challenges our imagery of God and ultimately ourselves. Rebecca, by the way, attendees, we have 4 questions so far that have been submitted. So please submit your questions at this point. We're going to get to them very quickly here. We're a little behind schedule simply because of our audio issues at the beginning of the hour. But I want to ask you, Rebecca, what's your relationship with the institutional church these days? You've heard some hurtful and ignorant things come from folks who, if they listened much better, they would know much better. But I think a lot of folks are choosing not to listen because they might be afraid of what they might learn. Where are you at with the church, and what's your spirituality look like? Could you say a little bit about that?
I'm a practicing Catholic. I follow the spirituality of Jesus and what he said. And his gospels are based on love, and love thy neighbor like thyself, and that one that is free of guilt, just cast the first stone. You know, all that's done. Don't look at the big thing in your eye before you look at your neighbor's eye, and all of that. So when we reflect on that, that is the Jesus that I follow, and the spirituality that I follow. The church is an institution. It's an institution of men, and they have their own issues to solve and their own challenges in their own lives. So and that's fine. That's what they are, and that's what they believe in. That's fine. That's between them and God. It doesn't bother me anymore. It used to, but it doesn't bother me anymore because that is their problem, not mine. If that is the way they want to live their spirituality and their faith, that is their problem, not mine anymore. Are they hurting people? Yes, they are. It's a lot of parents and children suffering because of that. And it's sad. It's saddened me. But at the same time, we have a responsibility in front of God, and we all are going to be questioned at one point or another. And they will have to answer the questions, I guess, at the end of their life. So I am doing my best to bring some light to some parents if they allow me to. I cannot impose it either. I mean, we all have our journeys, and eventually parents have to choose between their child and an opinion of a man. And if they really, really, really want to practice a faith, they need to go to the spirituality of the faith, not to the man or the woman of the faith. So we follow priests, and we follow ministers, and we follow rabbis. We don't follow God, really. That's what I see most of the time.
Well, it sounds like you have quite taken your own baptism seriously, and you two stand on your own feet quite squarely and firmly. It's wonderful to hear the empowerment in those words of yours. Let's open it up to the questions of our participants tonight, and see what their interest is for either or both of you. So I'm gonna maximize that. Logan, I'm gonna maximize that question here so I can see it. Jim Gown from Indianapolis asks, is Cuban culture more or less accepting than maybe American society at large?
You experience it more than I do. I wear my P-flag shirt to church every Sunday, just to be
good for you.
In case any parent are looking. Even though people in church know what I do, I just want to make sure that those that don't ask questions know that they might be able to approach me one day. The Hispanic community, I don't know what Delfin thinks. He knows more about these things than I do. But talking from an old Cuban perspective, the majority of Hispanics, we are Christians. And if we are not Catholic, we are very Orthodox Christians overall. So I think that we as a whole, as a culture, we are not open. I don't have experience in the United States. I don't think they're as open either, but it's more freedom of expression, I think, if anything, in this country than in ours. So in this country, regardless of the discrimination against the LGBTQ community, it's still some venues to talk and be and express. In our culture, that is not as free as in our countries. Completely not. In this country, we still have a lot of cultural values and stigmas and things that we have to overcome. So I will say it's either the same or we are less. What do you think, Delfin? I don't know. You've been everywhere, so you know everything.
I remember very clearly in the Dominican Republic, one of the things that I was told initially before I was allowed to enter the Jesuits was that my voice was too high. I needed to deepen it, and I needed to work on my mannerisms before they would allow me to enter the novitiate. And so it did send a red flag that Latin America, there is what's expected of males, and there's what's expected of females, and anything outside of that is not welcome. And I would share with my mom that here in the U.S., even with all the frustrating things that are happening, there is more freedom to express in some way, but in most of Latin America, it's very much black and white. And issues of sexuality, whether you're sleeping with men, whether you're sleeping with women, whether you're sleeping with no one, is just not talked about. It's just a don't ask, don't tell policy when it comes to the issue of sex generally.
Great. Thank you both. And I'm going to have to maximize this too because I can't see it. It's too small on my screen here. Marucci Palomo from Miami.
Hi, Marucci.
Hola, Rebeca. What suggestions or advice can you give to a Latina coming out to her family? In my case, Cuban, just like you.
You need to expect the normal reaction, which is either fixing you quite fast like I did, or waiting for the person to go through the journey. Some parents go through the journey faster than others. My journey was long and painful because I was older and I had to break too many doors, but it depends on the family dynamics, and it depends on how Orthodox, Catholic or Christian you are, how young or how old the person is. I don't think Delfin expected me to be open, which actually I wasn't, but I didn't kill him actually, even though I wanted to. It is hard to tell really, because I have spoken to young parents and they are completely 100% no. They rather see the child dead than gay, for example. And I have spoken to other parents that are completely non-accepting but wanting to accept. So it depends on so many factors, Marucci. We can talk. You can come to the house and we'll talk.
All right, another question from Jamie Manson. Hi, Jamie. Great to have you. We had Jamie as a guest last year in our first QCF season. Delfin, so many trans persons are using hormones now as early as college. Some parents are even giving them to their children if they present as trans at an early age. And now I have another question for this, the last question in front of me, so I don't have the end of, there it is. With all due respect, you still appear quite male. Assuming you're not using hormones, how do you feel fulfilled in your identity as a woman?
I identify as both male and female. And within many indigenous communities, many Native American communities, there's the identity of a two-spirit person, which were individuals who inhabited the in-between space of both male and female. Transitioning more and more, we are seeing that it is not only the medical or surgical side of things, but people simply living into wholeness, however that means for them. Mary Hunt, who I believe wrote an article years ago about sexual integrity and needing to be whole persons from a sexual orientation, sexual identity point of view. And I think that also applies to gender, that the goal is to live into gender integrity, to live into gender wholeness. And for some people that does involve hormones and other things. Because of where I am on my journey, being in a relationship for 10 years within my family and professionally, I've learned that doing anything to present more feminine or more womanly has negative consequences. And at my most recent job, I went to work one day as a test with my nails painted, and my supervisor told me that I was never to do that again. And so, needing a job, not wanting to be kicked out of my home, trying to discern what does this mean for my relationship with my partner, I simply present as male because it's safer. Where I am at this point on the journey, a lot of the medical stuff is not covered by a lot of insurances, and so it is a financial burden that I don't want to take on in addition to all my other financial burdens like student loans. And so it is a journey of wanting to express myself more, but doing so in ways that is safe. And it's an ongoing journey of learning what that means. In some places, I do wear skirts. I do gender bend because I feel safe, but I don't always get that. At YDS at Yale, ironically, was one of the few places where I was able to sort of challenge a lot of binaries within the div school. Outside of that, I haven't found a safe place to do that.
Thanks for your answer there. And Jamie, thank you for that good question. William Mayle from Lake Charles, how do you find your place in a church that often makes you feel unwelcome? And I'm presuming that's for you, Delfin. How do you find your place in a church that makes you feel unwelcome?
For a long time, I didn't. I felt that I couldn't be Catholic, and tried to journey to other religious denominations. I tried the Episcopal thing. I tried the United Church of Christ. I tried the Unitarians. And I don't know if Catholics, you're just scarred for life, or it's just always a part of you. And I would, sit in an Episcopal Eucharist, or I would go to a UCC service, and I'm like, where are all the bells and whistles? Where are the saints? Where's the incense? Where are the candles? And it pushed me. Div School was a place where I went in to pursue ministry as a non-Catholic and came out Catholic. And it's been a journey of these last few years, I would say, maybe 3-4 years, of rediscovering sides of Catholicism that I didn't know, and through that, discovering Call to Action, discovering Dignity, which were groups that I knew were there, but intentionally began having a relationship with, and discovering that there are many others, faithful Catholics who are questioning and who are trying to carve out a space for all of us to be at the table. And so it's thanks to Call to Action, and it's thanks to Dignity that I'm here today, because I don't know I would be if it weren't for them.
And Rebecca, for you, as you talked about your faith and spirituality in Jesus, but you also, before the show, mentioned that a Jesuit in your life, a Jesuit priest in your life, introduced you to Buddhism. Was this Jesuit the new Pope?
No, I don't think so. No.
Oh, I was hoping.
No.
Say a little bit about this more recent spiritual journey. Before we move on to the next question.
Yeah, Buddhism, and actually, well, I talked to you about that. The person that had the first question about, if you don't mind, the church, if it's difficult for Delfin, for example, to partake in a church that doesn't like him, it is actually more painful for the parents, because we are practicing in a place where more often than not they're saying something about our children. And even though we continue practicing, if you haven't walked the walk yet, and you're in the middle of what to do or not to do, it's quite painful. I think it's more painful for us, or as painful for us, than for them, because at least they know what they are, and they know what to expect, and it's known that if you know what the church, some of the churches said about the homosexual community, but the parent that is in hiding and is trying to cope with this situation is very, very painful. Okay, I just wanted to make that comment.
Yes, indeed. It is indeed.
And
Yeah.
Buddhism is, to me, the teachings of the Buddha and the teachings, excuse me, the audience for saying this, are very similar with the teachings of Jesus. They were all about loving thy neighbor, serving others, put others first, don't hate, don't criticize, don't judge, don't. So there is the movement of centering prayer in the Catholic Church that's very similar to Buddhist meditation. So in actuality, we have more things in common that we have different, if you really study the teachings of the Buddha. So I have no problem following both, because they're the same thing to me.
Yeah. Amen. And Delfin, to your point about dignity and call to action, thank God the church exists in different manifestations, right? Not just the church that is institution, or certainly that is just the hierarchy, but the church that arises in thousands and thousands of places on the face of this earth to bring the compassion of Jesus. One more quick question, and then we need to wrap it up. Jim, again, sorry if this has been covered. How does one realize another gender is more your essence? How does it hit you over the head, so to speak? It's a good question. That may demand yet another QCF.
Yes. Just briefly on the previous question, for a long time I didn't think it was possible to pursue ministry as a Catholic, and over the last year, several people have approached me about pursuing ordination through the Roman Catholic Women Priest movement, and I've begun a conversation with RCWP about the possibility of pursuing ordination, which 3 years ago I didn't think was possible, and so that's an exciting new development in my journey. How does one know? It's a really good question. I always did. I knew that there was something different, and it's really hard to verbalize. I have always felt a kinship. I've always felt a connection more deeply with women, with the feminine than I ever did with the masculine. And always just felt a disconnect with my body, that something wasn't clicking, that something wasn't right. And I think it's a question that is unique to each individual, and different trans people will respond differently. But for me, I just always knew, and didn't have words, didn't have language, didn't have an understanding on how to express it or how to make sense of it until I was older. And looking back on my life, I was like, oh, that's what this perhaps meant, and this makes sense. And the little boy who would cry every day, wishing to wake up in a different body, a lot of those experiences now make sense. Now that I have a deeper understanding and a better understanding of just language and education. But again, I always knew, but I just didn't know how to express it.
Delfin, thank you. You're just so articulate and rich in your descriptions, and I look forward to hearing you. You're a presenter at our convention this summer in Minneapolis. You're a presenter and a workshop facilitator, as is Jamie Manson, who's with us as an attendee tonight. And Rebeca, what a privilege it was to hear your story and your empowered, compassionate perspective. You've got a lucky child. Excuse me, your child Delfin is lucky to have you. I'm sure you know that. Marianne, you can come on back on if you'd like to wrap it up for us.
Yes, I just really want to echo my thanks for a really special evening, I think, of sacred story and a reminder of how our faith lives in our stories, in our lives, in our families, in our communities. Thank you so much, Rebeca and Delfin. I hope you have more opportunities to hear from you. And for folks who do live in the Miami area, Delfin and Rebecca both speak quite often at GSA events, PFLAG events, church, wherever they can, and it's an important and vital ministry that they carry on every day. And thank you for that transformational work that you're doing. And Delfin has certainly spoken all over the country at many gatherings and will continue to do so. To everyone who joined in tonight, thank you for your attentive participation. For those of you who asked questions or typed in, you really enriched the conversation. And I hope you find enough value in this that you will share it when we send the link of the recording out to everyone. Please forward invite other folks to listen, to participate, and to join us when we have future conversations. Also, we'll send a survey out and appreciate your feedback and suggestions for other speakers or other topics you'd like to see covered in future QCF events. If you have any other kinds of comments or questions, please email qcf@dignityusa.org. And again, if this event moves you to do so, or if some of the work that's been done in covering the papal transition, or many of the other things that Dignity USA is doing moves you to do so, we definitely welcome your financial support and your membership. You can join or make a contribution at the Dignity USA website, dignityusa.org. So thank you all very much for participating this evening, and look forward to hearing from us by email. And again, Jim, thanks for a great conversation, and Rebecca and Delfin, thank you so much for sharing your souls and your stories with us this evening. Good night, everyone.
Good night.
Thank you very much. Bye-bye.